if you're career transitioning, you need to speak to career transitioners, not coders, because a lot of coders haven't changed career. They're formally trained, they have no idea how to change career. Not the same thing.
Welcome to the Exponential Growth Podcast, where we demystify what it takes to break into tech. I'm your host, James Hudnall, and my goal is to highlight real-life examples of people moving into careers they love, so you can too. Hey everyone, today I'm joined by Zubin Pratap. Now, I believe Zubin describes himself as a recovering corporate lawyer, teaching himself to code at the tender young age of 37, and eventually landing a developer role at Google. Today, he's a developer relations and software engineer at Chainlink Labs, and he spends his nights and weekends helping others execute career transitions. So we're going to dive in and learn more about Zubin, what he's learned by reinventing himself a few times, and how he broke into tech. Zubin, welcome to the show.
Thank you, James. Great to be here. Really appreciate you having me on.
So glad to have you on. Now, Zubin, I've never done this before, but I want to ask you, how would you introduce yourself? How did I do, and how would you do it?
I think you pretty much nailed it. You summarized it. I mean, I was about 37, going on 38 when I started to learn. But before that, I had a longish career in the law, very briefly as an executive in several countries. I even started really at literally day zero for me was a 6-month stint at the UN. So yeah, I've been in multiple countries doing different things at various points of time.
Okay.
Yeah, you got it right.
Yeah, no, I like it. And so for most people, we tend to go back to early childhood. But again, I would ask you, given your vast experience and the many pivots that I think I've seen that you've done, I would ask you, is that the appropriate place to touch on to lay the foundation for Zubin?
Certainly. I mean, I don't see why not. And there is also a lot to be said for addressing some of the implicit excuses and assumptions people have about backstories. Whether there are advantages or disadvantages. So I'm very happy to start from childhood onwards, if you like. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Where'd you grow up? What was it like?
Yeah, so I grew up in a few cities in India. I was born in 1981, so that gives away my age. And I moved around a few times by the time I was 18. And, at 17 and a half, I made it to a fairly prestigious law school in India. Not because I necessarily knew I wanted to do law. It was more that I knew I didn't want to do the other options available to a person in the 90s like me, which is medicine and more traditional engineering, not IT, but sort of civil and other forms of engineering, mechanical engineering. Okay. So a process of elimination, plus I really couldn't afford to go to the US at that point of time. And so, I had to choose growing up in India at that point of time, it was very, very important to do really well and go to a good college. Otherwise, the threat that loomed over your head was that you wouldn't get a decent job and your life is over. Oh my gosh, it was all very doom and gloom. So, so for me, going to this particular law school represented the best opportunity I could possibly get, not just from an ego point of view, which I'm almost ashamed to admit was important to me back then, but also because of the prospects after that. And so I did that 98 to 2003. And as you can imagine, James, 98 to 2003 was a very pivotal moment in human history. And I was locked away in a law school that was in a relatively secluded area. And I sort of missed that entire .com moment. I went in, Google wasn't a thing. I came out, Google was a thing. That's how much the world changed. Plus we had the .com boom and the bust. All of it happened in that time. So very, very different world. And then, after that, I started my practice in law and so on. So, I mean, I grew up with to answer your question more about my childhood, I grew up with relative privilege for someone in India, definitely an upper middle class sort of background, as we'd call it there, with decent education, English education, good opportunities for someone, with my background to be able to sort of, be educated well. I think the world's very different now. It's much flatter. People in, who aren't in big cities have access to tremendous opportunities that we didn't back there. But I did have advantages, no doubt about it.
Yeah. Okay. And back when you were studying law, did you have any desire to perhaps one day move into tech or to touch the things that you're doing today, I guess? Because like you mentioned, you had the .com bubble, and before the bubble presented itself, but perhaps you were, as you mentioned, shielded from that. So maybe it wasn't that present.
Deeply shielded. Yeah, James, it's actually a great question because, we weren't even aware of how big this entire revolution was. Just to give you a sense of perspective, there were only about just under 80 people batch of students in the law school I went to. So there were 5 years in the program, and each year had about between 70 and 80 people, and 30,000 plus people would apply or whatever. So it was extremely small and concentrated. It was a tiny little university that had really, really good sort of output. And so we were kind of cut off from everything that happened back then. So no, I had no particular desire or interest in the tech sector. At first, we didn't even know what it was. Then, as things started to become, Hotmail became a thing. I can't remember the other ones. Was it MySpace? Maybe it was MySpace. Hotmail and Angel Fire and all these things are things. And you're like, oh, cool. Yahoo search engine. We play around with stuff. No idea what the tech sort of revolution was all about. We were just completely cut away from it. So no, it was a long time. It was after I moved to Australia that I first started to realize there's an entire other world out there. And it was so competitive to be in the law school that I was in that really it was nose to the grindstone, and you had to keep really sharp focus because when you only have 60 to 80 people come in, using a competitive entrance test, you tend to attract highly competitive people.
Sure.
And so that nothing sharpens your focus like knowing everybody around you is going to kick your butt. So
yeah. Did you always have that competitive nature growing up?
No, I sort of had to induce it in myself because I'm not naturally a competitive person. But I had to induce it in myself because I just felt like professionally I was not likely to get the opportunities I wanted in a very competitive country like India unless I learned to compete. It's a learnable skill,
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. So you graduate law school, and it sounds like maybe it takes you to Australia next. What happens?
No, actually, I ended up being a trial lawyer and a litigator in India for a while. And then I switched to corporate law, doing mergers and acquisition and aviation financing at that point in time. And then I got the opportunity for actually an American law firm to be in Australia. And so I moved to Melbourne in 2007. I was just short of 27 then, and moved to Australia. And then for the next 8 years, I was a lawyer in different capacities in Australia. Yeah.
Okay. And let me ask you, so up until this point in your life, Zubin, is there any intentionality in these decisions that you're making? And the reason that I ask you that is because I know, looking back at my own past, I honestly want to say the first intentional professional decision that I made was leaving my safe position just a couple of years ago and joining LinkedIn. So it took me 3 decades plus to do that. So I'm curious, in your own path that we're talking about, at that point when you're 27 and moving, were you just going through the motions, or was there a plan?
So when you, very quickly for you, James, when you talk about,
Sure.
are you talking about leaving your previous position at, I think it was at Great Lakes or something like that?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And
yes.
you were
Even
there
up
for quite
through,
a while, right?
I was, and that I enjoyed it. I wouldn't trade any of that, but that was pretty much almost, I hate to say it this way, Zubin, but it was almost sleepwalking through life because opportunities presented themselves, and I never really challenged myself to make sure that it was in line with what I wanted to do and what I wanted to become. It was, this seems fun, I can explore it. And personally, not to go down that rabbit hole, I think to an extent that's a good thing to explore interests, but I don't think that was the case in my case. I think it was just, this could be an opportunity, I may as well try it, as opposed to, does this align itself with where I see myself 5 years from now?
How long did that go on for you, James? Do you remember how long you went to that sleepwalk period of your life? So
up until 30 plus, I guess, is when I actually left. So just to recap that quickly, graduated college back in 2012 with an 4-year degree, sleepwalking through all of that. Went to Sweden for a year. That was amazing. Got back, didn't know what I wanted to do. Went to work on a boat to kind of push myself out of my comfort zone. At that point, about a year and a half into that, I had an opportunity to move over to the management side. And again, it's better than what I had, but it still wasn't let's go back to the drawing board, first principles. What do you actually want to do? I never got that until a couple of years ago when I discovered programming, and I really wanted to dive into that.
Interesting. So, I mean, it sounds to me, and I will answer your question, it sounds to me like your career was a lot more unstructured in the sense that you did experiment, perhaps is a word, a lot more. You followed your curiosity a lot more. You did things. From the outside, perhaps it even looks a little whimsical. I don't believe it was, but it sounds.
I think it was. No, I think it
Interesting.
was up until, yeah, no,
Interesting.
I believe it. I lacked a lot of intentionality. I believe I did a good job in those roles, but I don't
Mm,
feel any of those were intentional decisions on my point until I made that conscious decision to reinvent myself, similar to your own story, and to transition into software engineering because I discovered that on my own. It was something that I wanted to pursue.
okay. Yeah, and so that resonates greatly, and that's why I was asking you those questions. So I'll try and be succinct, but I'll also give you two perspectives on it. I'll give you the in the moment,
Sure,
Zubin 20 years ago, 15 years ago, looking forward approach, and I'll give you the hindsight analysis as well, right?
sure,
Because
sure.
there's a huge gap between those two, and I think it'll speak very squarely to what you said. So, in the context of growing up in the 90s, saying, okay, there's only really one path: get into law school and then pursue a legal career. And then I started off as a litigator. That was intentional, not but it wasn't aligned,
Okay,
right? So back then, when I was 12, 13, 14, and I said, I'm going to get into this one law school, it was intentional. There was a
okay,
goal there. And the reason that was is because I didn't have too many other choices.
sure.
So that sharpened my focus. Just, knowing that, hey, this is a question of my life. I've got to get into the best school I can, and I don't want to do these other things, not for any other good reason. But so I'll therefore do, law because it's
Yeah,
prestigious and it pays well, right? So I sympathize with that approach. I would hesitate to say that I was particularly goal driven, other than these sort of tactical goals, but that was it, right? And then after that, when I got into law school, it was it never occurred to me that you could be intentional for the rest of your life,
hmm.
right? It was you get into college, this is what I learned, and then the rest of your life begins.
Yeah,
And there was complete lack of not clarity, but I just didn't think that I could do whatever I wanted. I could set any goal I wanted. It was like,
yeah,
okay, once I graduate law school, I am just thrown into this world, and whatever happens, happens, and whatever unfolds, unfolds. And sure,
yeah,
you'd have goals, and I say within inverted quotes, air quotes like that, because you'd have goals like, okay, I want to, by the fifth year, I want to be a senior associate, lawyer, and then by 10 or 12 years, I want to be a partner. Those sort of goals, you have these, but to be honest, James, the better word for them is ambition/dream.
hmm.
Goals require structure and a process, and I totally lack those.
Okay,
So I would want these outcomes, and I'd have no intentionality to make them happen other than, yeah, I'll just work hard, right? So that went on for a long time. And then in 2013, I tried to experiment with my first startup and failed. Second one also sort of failed. And when I say startup, really what happened is I hired a bunch of developers in India to help me build something out, and it never actually saw the light of day. Um, it was only later in 2016 when I started listening to self improvement and reading self improvement things that I realized that in 2016 I'd been 13 years in the workforce. I was and I just decided to leave my career in law and move into the more management side of things. And I was doing my MBA at that time at night. I was doing night school, and I realized I'd done it all wrong.
hmm.
To your point, I'd sort of been tactical, and I'd sort of let things unfold without realizing. Sorry, I hadn't seized control. That's how I
Hmm.
describe it. I hadn't seized control. I wasn't taking enough agency in what I wanted and setting, there was not enough intentionality. And so I started studying for the next 2 to 3 years the process of intentionality. And I realized almost everyone says the same thing. And frankly, every blog in the world out there will tell you what you need to do to set goals and what you need to do to be intentional. The real magic is in
Hmm.
how you do it, right? That was the big insight that helped me. And it was just a system. It was a question of literally, this is how I describe it. I had to re-engineer my mindset and psychology from the ground up, like literally knock everything down, brick by brick, build it back up. And what that really required was total clarity on the goals I wanted,
Hmm.
complete acceptance that I would probably fail. Statistically
Yeah,
speaking, the outcomes are not great, and absolute commitment to trying anyway,
yeah,
every day, right?
yeah.
And those three ingredients came together. And so, yeah, to try and sort of wrap that answer up, I had some big goals, but they were more ambitions and desires and dreams.
Okay,
Very little process or understanding of what true goal setting and execution requires, and
okay.
almost no intentionality in terms of what I wanted to do next. And even software engineering, it's not like I set a goal to become a developer. I had this I had a startup in 2017 through to 2019 around that time, and I had that actually got users. I got contracts with the local governments in Melbourne and Australia, and eventually I paid a lot of money to a technical team in Australia to build it out because I wasn't technical. And then I found a co-founder because I had some traction. It was easier to get a technical co-founder. He had a baby. He quit because he had a baby about 6 months in or something. And then I was left, holding the proverbial baby with the contracts and stuff like that to deliver on. And so I taught myself to code for that. And like you, I enjoyed it so much that I formulated an intention to maybe do this, professionally.
Awesome.
And 7 months later, there I was. But I tried and failed to learn to code for about 4 years by that time, starting in 2013. I'd started, failed, stopped, and this kept happening. But if I hadn't had the complete shift in how I set goals and execute on them in 2016, 2017, I would not have succeeded in 2019, which is when I got my first dev job.
Okay.
Right?
Man,
so,
there's a lot to unpack there. I love all of that. There's two rabbit holes I want to go down if you'll entertain me, Zubin. So the first one is you'd mentioned this intentional decision to kind of self-study personal growth. And that really resonated with me because I realized I too went down that path, and it was shortly after I went to work on the boat. And again, just to set the stage in my mind, I feel like I was trying to play catch up where, previously I had struggled with, basically I was addicted to video games all throughout college, which is why it took me so long to graduate. And it's like, man, now I'm in the real world. I need to catch up. This is a much bigger game, the game of life, which I still ascribe to that line of thinking 100%. But I had to figure out the rules. And thankfully, I came across the personal growth, the concept, I guess, of personal growth. And I want to ask you, what resources, if you remember, did you explore? Because I know that there are listeners out there, Zubin, that maybe they've already gone down that path, but maybe they're interested and they didn't even know that it was an option.
Yeah. It started off with, of all things in the world, James, a Will Smith video from back in the day where he talks about this old saying from Confucius, which I'd known, but he reminded me. And it was the way he expressed it. He's like, whatever he who says he can and he who says he cannot are both usually right. And then he explained his interpretation of that. I remember the moment, James, because I was sitting up in bed. It was September 2016. And I did not sleep that night because that 3-minute clip made me realize that everything I'd assumed about Will Smith was wrong. Right? For the first time, it occurred to me that, hang on, these guys have really achieved things in their life. They actually think differently. It's not that they were lucky. Maybe they were. Everyone's got a bit of luck coming into their life, good and bad. It's not that they were necessarily at the right place in the right time, but there's an intensity with which he spoke in that 3-minute clip that I'm like, no, this is years of building that mindset and that rigor and that discipline. And I suddenly realized, what other real big achievers think like this? And that opened up the rabbit hole. So I went through a whole bunch of books and eventually there's obviously the classics, The Magic of Thinking Big, Think and Grow Rich, Psycho-Cybernetics. Like, some of them are downright woo-woo, and the scientific person in me sort of cringes at times. But it almost doesn't matter how they package it; the message is still the same, right? And if you're open-minded enough to it and you apply it, and you don't have unreasonable expectations about an overnight miracle, you will detect steady changes. The more consistent you are, the more changes you'll. But it takes 2 to 3 years at least to see the results.
Yes. Yeah. No, 100%.
Was that consistent with your experience? Yeah.
It absolutely is. And to your point, Zubin, I've tried to, I guess, share these discoveries with friends that are more close-minded. And to your point, you have to be willing and able and, I guess, ready to receive that knowledge. And you have to 100%. believe that it works or it won't work, which is, some people call it woo-woo or whatnot, but I feel like, that translates to almost any discipline that you can think of. And back to Will Smith's quoting of Confucius, where basically if you believe it, it will be. So
100%. Can I just add that it is so foundational what you said, and I really hope people listening to this really catch on to that. You have to believe,
Yes.
right? And I've said this, I think, on one of my links. It's not just enough that you have to believe it's possible. You have to believe it's possible for you,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Even though the evidence is not there.
Yep.
And your brain's going to be the first one that gives you all the evidence. It's going to lawyer up on you and stack all the evidence against you and make you feel really bad.
Yeah.
And I really hope people listen to that, because that is normal, expected,
Yes.
unavoidable. That's not when you stop. That's exactly the moment you keep going. And
Yep.
I run a little coaching program for career changers who want to get into code. I spend at least 3 weeks on psychology out of the 8 weeks we spend together. Like,
Yeah.
honestly, James, when you talked about self-development being a key, portal through which you had to walk before you actually moved into this world, almost everything we do comes down to the thoughts we have,
Yes.
right? That's the precursor to everything. And if we don't get our psychology right, it doesn't matter how much code you learn.
Yeah.
You're never going to rid yourself of that monkey in your back about whether
Yep.
and all the struggles that go with it. And so without the right psychology, everyone from Michael Phelps all the way to Jordan talk about this, right?
Yep.
Any performance of any sort in any domain requires belief and mindset and a lot of
Yes.
work in these two. You have to train these as much as you train your muscles every single day.
Yep.
So I'm so glad you brought that belief point out. It is critical.
Yeah. So I think if I remember your timeline correctly, before you arrived at this point, it sounded like you started to dabble with startups. I think you had said 2013. And I want to the extent you're comfortable, Zubin, I'd love to go down that thread as well. And the first question there is, what gave you either the confidence or courage to go that route? And is it fair that you were still studying law at that point, and this was a side hustle venture interest that you were exploring?
Yeah, 2013, I just changed jobs from a law firm into what's known as in-house. I was working for a very large telco, sort of like the Australian version of the US AT&T. It was the largest in Australia. It's called Telstra and so on. So I was still very much, by this time, I was about 10 years into my practice of law. And startup is a very kind and generous word. But in 2013, the world was gripped and seized with startup fever, right? Because Instagram started becoming a thing. Airbnb was big. Like 2013 is not that long ago. But the first iPhones, 2007, 2008. Smartphones are becoming ubiquitous. Mobile computing, or mobile as we say in the US, is becoming sort of ubiquitous as well. 2013 everyone was gripped by startup fever. People are starting up things left, right, and center. And I wanted to be part of that. And I'm like, why am I outside in the law? Instead of spotting risk and negotiating deals, I should be building companies. And so my first startup, in quotes, was an application called Remind. Sort of saw the light of day, but really it was a slightly expensive but dangerous sort of learning experience for me, because it took an enormous amount of time after work and stuff like that. And an enormous amount of constantly butting up against the edge of my knowledge and realizing how seriously disconnected I was from the technology world. Like, I did not understand anything. I still got it. I launched it. No one used it. Absolutely no one used it. Like maybe 30 people, of which half of my friends. But it was a great idea, I thought. Anyway, that tanked. And then 2015 again, 2014, 2015, I started working on something else, which actually had legs, but I didn't know how to execute, because in 2016, other people started launching it and got great success. But in 2014, 2015, I built something, again, with the help of external developers, called Noble Genie, which my idea was, if you ever buy property, you need a couple of things. You need a lawyer, you need a conveyancer, you need a tax person, and then you need to work out your will and all that. What if I could create, basically the idea is a marketplace for these things. I just didn't have the vocabulary to express it that way. Managed to build it out. And here's the thing, James, you'll find it funny. The team that built it out it was a Node and JavaScript application. I didn't know what that meant there. They gave me the code, and they just said, put it on your server, and then it'll go live. And I didn't know what that meant. And I kept asking them, and I didn't know what that meant. And I was so humiliated by not knowing what that meant that it never actually saw the light of day. It's sitting in a zip file somewhere on my Google Drive, because I didn't know what that meant. And anytime I tried to do something, everything broke. Like, it was a nightmare, So those are my startup experiences before the third one that actually worked, because by this time I'd educated myself enough to know. But it took 4 years of having my ego bloodied before I started to understand the basics,
Yeah. Yeah. So let's zoom out and let's look at those. And I didn't hear you refer to any of those as failures, and I didn't hear them as failures. But again, I'm trying to think for the audience, and I want to ask you, failure or not, the things that you learn from each successive venture, I feel like they probably lended themselves to a better iteration down the line. Is that
100%.
fair?
100%. So what when I coach my students, what I try and encourage them, because I think everyone's heard this about failures are useful, failure is learning, failure makes you better. Honestly, that's a hindsight perspective, right? And it is very hard for someone going in to relate to that perspective, someone who's been through it, Sure. And it's because it's so hard to relate to it, the mind will poo-poo it and dismiss it, or, they will not be able to relate to it properly. Yeah. So here's how I've started to reframe it for my students is you've got to want it badly enough that even if you fail, you're likely to pick it up. But you're likely to stand up again and pick yourself up again. And I encourage people to think about, do you want and enjoy this enough, even just the process, that if you fail, you're likely to get up again and try again simply because you're that curious. Simply because you're that drawn to this topic. And it doesn't have to be logical. It doesn't have to be intellectually defensible. You just can't help yourself, right? And I'm sure you would have seen this when you started learning to code. Some people who get into code just get sucked in. You can't help yourself. It doesn't matter how frustrating it is. You will get up in the middle of the night because you had the idea. You will do insane things in the eyes of your family because you can't help yourself.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. No, you find yourself in that flow state, I think is what many refer to it as. And I love that framework, Zubin, because I feel like that translates again to so many other facets of life, all the way from investments. That's why I generally stick to index funds, because good, bad, or indifferent, just keep putting money in nonstop. And I feel like pursuing interests or pursuing things that interest you, and to your point, if they hold that interest and you trip and fall, you're more than likely to get back up just because you find that thing so fascinating. So I love that framework.
Totally, 100%. And I think it really helps people reframe failures, things that they just have to do, getting their knees bruised or bloodied on the way to getting closer to what they enjoy. Kids do this all the time. Yeah. When you watch a kid, I don't have kids, but and I know you do. I watch, my nephew or others in the park, and I'm like, when they have a mission, doesn't matter if they fall, they will pick themselves up and keep going like nothing happened, right?
Oh yeah.
But if they're wandering around and they trip, then there's going to be a crying moment, right?
Yep.
But if they have their eyes locked into something, it doesn't matter. They could fall and whack their head. They'll keep going,
Yeah.
And I'm
100%.
Kids know it. They follow their intuition and instinct, and they just go for it because they want to. They can't. They're that drawn to it. Yeah. Adults do this too. We just don't realize it.
Yeah. No, 100%. So let's jump back to, I remember one of these ventures that you had the code, the developers handed it over to you, and it sounded like this was the point at which you kind of jumped in and started to learn how to code at 37, if I remember your timeline correctly. So what was that like? Take us back.
Learning to code, you mean?
Yes.
So at this point in time, I'd been through the problem that I think millions of people trying to learn to code have been through. I didn't know where to start. And so I had several false starts. And because I didn't know where to start, I didn't know that something was too big a mountain to climb or too complicated. And here's an example. For 2 years between 2013 and 2017, when I really got my act together and got intentional. So until I made an intentional plan, I was guessing my way to learning to code from 2013 to 2017. And each attempt would last 4, 6, 8 weeks, and I'd be absolutely humiliated and defeated and stop. So let's talk about each of those attempts. The first one was to, I think it was to learn how to do a mobile app. So that was for Remind, which was meant to be mobile. So I went straight into the Android framework. Now, I didn't do HTML. I didn't even know that was a thing. I went straight into the Android framework because I had an Android phone, and everyone said, if you're doing mobile development, do Android if you don't have an iOS. Did the research, bought some books, went straight into the Android framework, could not understand a thing because I didn't know Java. And forget Java, I didn't know the basics of programming. Forget about programming, I didn't know the basics of type. I knew nothing. So what happens there is you take this run up and you try to vault over a wall without realizing that that wall is impossibly high for you. You're just too small for it. It's not personal. It's just how the world is. It's like trying to get a toddler to drive an SUV. They have all the inherent skill in the world. They have all the inherent potential. They're just a toddler. It's not going to work. It's just not going to happen. So that happened for 2 straight years. Then the 3rd year, I suddenly realized I'm doing something wrong. I'm going to try and learn, and I have to learn Java first to learn the Android. So I was like, fine, Java is also more general purpose. I got into that, and I was hopelessly confused because I had been fooled into this thing about you can learn to code for free on the internet, and I had mistaken literacy for skill. Right. Nobody in the last 400 years has got a job for literacy. Right. And literacy simply means reading and writing something enough to make some sense of what's going on. That's my definition of literacy, right?
Yeah.
Anybody who knows the alphabet can read it. They may not be skilled at speaking. They may not be skilled at writing. They may not even know how to spell. But they know the alphabet enough to read and write something and basic communicate. That's skill. Sorry, I beg your pardon. That's literacy. And nobody gets employed for that, right? Yeah. But I had been seduced into this narrative on the internet because of 2016 it started to really blow up about you don't have to have a computer science degree and all that, and I got suckered into that, all of which is true. The problem is it's not enough to just learn off a few blogs. The world is much more complex than that, right? Yeah. So I started to learn how to do Java, and I was totally overwhelmed. Because of my past failures, James, I had built an assumption that I'm probably not smart enough. So not only had I failed, and not only had I not known how to start, and I was guessing my way to success, I had done myself the immense disservice of letting my confidence get knocked. Not because I was inherently incapable, but because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Sure. And I didn't know that I had to admit that before I could fix it. Yeah. Right. So it was confidence-wise bad. I was getting older, and in your 30s or 40s, now I do it routinely for people when I coach them. Like, last year, almost 100% of my students that I worked with transitioned in less than 10 months from zero to first coding job, and I can save them 4 years because I know all the things not to do. Yeah. And the one resource we leak when we're guessing our way to success is time and energy. Yeah. But really time. Yeah. If you're guessing your way to success, you leak time, even if you have all the raw skills. Like, why would you go through the effort of that on your own, unguided or blind, right? So that was a huge insight for me. I mean, I did have coaches along the way that helped me, not so much in technical. In fact, all my coaches are non-technical, but they helped with the mindset piece. They helped with the planning piece. They helped with the focus and eliminating of nonsense piece, which is really critical because that sucks time, Yeah. So hope that answers a lot of the points you're trying to get at.
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. And I don't want to give away the secret sauce for the program that you have, but I want to go back to that. Sounds like you're dealing with imposter syndrome, which every listener I know is going through or will go through. I know I still go through it. You probably do as well. And I wanted to ask you, what's the single thing you feel like might help you best when A, you were feeling it back then, or even B, when you're feeling it present day? Do you have, I'm sure you have multiple facets to attack that. Is there one thing that sticks out above the others?
For imposter syndrome particularly?
Yes, to get through that.
So there's no one thing. And I tend to shy away. So I used to look for the one thing for many, 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 many years in different aspects of life. And I realized it's never one thing. It's kind of everything, And that's, I think Jocko Willink made me sort of realize that when he said it's never just the one thing, it's everything that you do, has to stack up and add up, right?
I like that.
So it helped me a lot because it took the pressure of me looking for the one thing and wondering about whether I missed it. Oh, I have one thing. It seems to be good, but is this the one thing? And the moment I said, it doesn't have to be one thing. It could be a dozen things as long as they're all aligned. Go for it, So for me, imposter syndrome. Okay, so and I talk very publicly about this, and the couple of videos, and I've talked very publicly about this. It really helped that I'd seen it in every career I'd been at all levels, and I also saw it at Google. In fact, there's a lot of internal resources in Google that help address this, right? From other engineers where they share it openly. So first and foremost, if you're human, you're probably going to feel it. If you're not feeling it, it's because in your comfort zone. These are my two heuristics. If you're human, you're probably going to feel it. And if you're not feeling it, that's because you're well in your comfort zone. The moment you wander near the edge of your comfort zone, if you're human, you're going to feel it.
Yeah, I like that.
Unavoidable. Okay. And so how I sort of coach my students through it is after the age of 3 or 4, we stop worrying about a shadow. We don't even notice it. It's there with us everywhere. We don't try to outrun it. We don't try to step around it. We don't try to dodge it. We just assume it's going to be there. And we don't pay any attention to it. That's easier said than done because a shadow is just a shadow. But in our minds, it's hard to not pay attention to things in our mind because they're on our mind. But it is a learnable skill. And one thing I will say, about, just to sort of pick up on language that we used just now, this tendency about one thing, this is my personal view, one thing, secret sauces, the 5 most important things, these are frameworks to help sharpen people's thinking to figure out what it is for themselves. They're not necessarily universal truths, but also it's dangerous to assume that there is a one thing or a secret sauce. Honestly, you know this, even when raising kids and stuff, everything matters. Everything you do matters.
Yep.
And so if we all have 24 hours a day, whether it's Elon or James or Zubin, we all have 24 hours a day. And so if everything matters, we want to do only the things that matter in those 24 hours. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that you reframe that and challenge the question, because I feel like I agree. I do agree with you. And I feel like I agree with you coming in, and I learned something there, Zubin. So I appreciate that reframe 100%. So let's go back. You're learning to code, and fast forward a little bit, you land a role at Google. I imagine there's a little bit of nuance in between that. You want to talk us through how that happened?
Yeah. So in 2018, when I realized my startup's unit economics were not great, but I had to sort of land the ship, so to speak, with some of the proofs of concepts I had with, local counsel, I started learning to code. And just to give people a bit of context, I was 36, 37 around that time when I realized, probably 37-ish, when I realized, okay, kind of halfway through my life, right? 37 times 2, you could do the math. It's kind of, 74, 75, I'll be. That's, maybe we'll live a bit longer, but I'm like, I'm kind of near the halfway point. I have sort of one chance to do this right again. And that was very sobering, because I look back and I'm like, wow, that was really fast. I got to 37 really fast.
Yeah.
And I can see another 37 going by just as fast. Like, if it feels fast now, it's going to be fast in 37 years. So I'm like, I have one chance to do this right again. I'm not entirely pleased with the way I did it the first time. Not because I was bad or idiotic about it. I just didn't know what was possible. I just did. James, just a little sort of slightly philosophical point for a moment. And I see this all the time in my coaching students. Fear kills more dreams than failure does. We know that. But a lack of imagination is at least as responsible for us not self-fulfilling.
I like that.
A lack of imagination.
Unpack that a little bit.
Sorry?
Yeah, no, I like to unpack that a little bit. I think I know what you meant by that, but yeah.
Every time you look at it now, okay, you've achieved a tremendous transition from being, meandering in the start, suddenly, not suddenly, but over time, recrafting yourself, and you're an engineer at LinkedIn. And now I'm willing to bet the sort of goals you set for the next 20, 30 years of your life, way bigger than the ones you would have thought you were going to set 5 years ago.
Sure.
Right? Because your experience has helped you expand your imagination. But we always had the power to imagine that anyway.
Yep.
And knowing what you know now, had you gone back 5 years ago, I'm willing to wager there's a good chance you'd have set slightly bigger goals.
Yeah, 100%.
Right. And therefore, to me, that indicates logically that a lot of goal setting is a failure of imagination. that comes from a failure of belief in oneself. But you don't have the evidence to justify those bigger beliefs, right?
Yeah.
And so this is our evolution as humans.
Yeah. Yeah. So to the people out there listening that may be concerned, can they dream too big, Zubin, in your mind? Or should they maybe listen to feedback along the way to ring that back in? And what would you say to that?
So I would say if it feels easily achievable, your dream is too small.
Okay.
If it feels achievable, it's probably still a bit small. It has to feel just that little bit beyond your reach.
Okay.
And that's what's going to make you stretch that bit, right? And so there are two quotes that I sort of live by on this. One is, your problems never shrink, you grow. And I think that was life-changing for me to understand that, because the thing that you thought was hard yesterday that's no longer hard today, the thing is the same. It hasn't changed. You have.
Yep. Yeah.
Right? The problem didn't shrink. You grew. One. The second thing is, I think it was Earl Nightingale that said this. The tragedy of life is not that people aim too high and miss. It's that they aim too low and hit. Very powerful for me. Right? And using those two quotes, I often now sort of set goals and I calibrate it. Look, there's no point me wanting to leap 8 steps at a time. Like if I'm looking at stairs, I can't do 8 steps. I know it's physically not possible for me. Maybe I'll get to a level of skill where I can. Or look at people who are learning how to dunk, right? I was always too short. At 5'10", I was too short to do it. But I watched friends and colleagues, 6'2", 6'3". At first they couldn't, but it was achievable. And they'd keep going until they did it, right? But they'd start off with lower goals, touching the backboard, touching the rim, and you build it up. So it's the same thing with goals, is you want to stretch to well past the point you're comfortable doing now. That's where your imagination will start to really struggle. And knowing fully well that eventually that'll be the starting point for the new goal. But it's just a question of time, right? So to go back to that, the transition into Google, when I was thinking I better start down this company, the unit economics suck. I don't really have the support I need. I've spent over 100K or 80K of my own money on this, Aussie, and I was like, and I had no job. I did have to work side consulting gigs to keep the lights on, and stuff like that. Like there was a lot of psychology that went into that period of my time because I was terrified. In fact, I wrote about it quite publicly, saying, just for the record, I'm always terrified. Like I'm just terrified all the time, right? Yeah. But I said, okay, I need to sort of get back. I had a mortgage at that point in time. I had no income for a couple of years. I had huge expenses for those years, plus rent, plus my mortgage. And I was like, okay, I need to get back on, not back on track. I'm like, I need to make this more sustainable cash-wise. I was not saving. I was burning through savings and all that. And I was willing to do that. I was willing to do that for the dream. I was willing to lose 100K or 200K, even if it really set me back a lot, which it did. Because that's how badly I was curious about it. And this is what I'm saying, like when you want it badly enough, you'll do crazy things and eventually you'll break through, right? So that happened. And then I was learning to code, and my coach said, this is not really about the skill, so literacy, it's about the skills and it's about, breaking down the process. And so I set a goal, okay, by April 2019, I wanted to be a professional developer. I actually got the offer by March. And May I started, so there you go.
Basically hit.
But yeah, I basically hit. But if you know how to set a goal and then reverse engineer the process, so I started June 2018. So yeah, I was 37 when I started. Seriously, like I said, I had tried failed attempts a couple of times in the past, but I was effectively starting from scratch. I still didn't know. I knew how to read some basics, but I didn't know how to write anything, solve problems. Started from scratch. June 2018. I sat down and I said, okay, I'm going to do this. I even applied to a boot camp in the US. I took a massive $54,000 loan to go to the US for 3 months. I went for a week and I came back. Different story altogether. But the reason I came back is I realized they were going to teach me how to code. My goal was not to learn to code. My goal was to change career. Okay. And the difference is how many people do we know how to play the guitar and how many people do we know in a band? I didn't want to just learn to play the guitar. I wanted to be in the band, right? Fair. And I realized all the people teaching me in these boot camps, and I know you've had a very successful experience. So, I think boot camps help a lot. A lot of people do get success out of them. But at 37, 38, I'm like, everyone's 10 years younger than me. None of them have changed careers. I'm from a different country. And I could see in the results around me that a very large percentage of people, more than half, were not getting successful results for 6+ months. And so in terms of actually landing the job. And so, this is 2018 or whatever. So I was like, no, I don't think this is going to work for me. Like, just in my circumstances, I would rather have money coming in while I learned. And so, I went back to consulting gigs and I decided, okay, I'll just form my own plan. And 7 months later, I got my first developer role. I actually got all 4 of the roles I applied for. And that's another thing, is people tend to just apply without intention. Like, intentionality is a theme, right, James, through everything. Yep. I applied for only 4 roles after doing extensive research and real analysis. Again, I'd been on the hiring side on other professions and countries, and I saw that there's a pattern. So I applied for 4 and got all 4, and I was the least qualified candidate, right? So, and I've seen amazing posts from you that talk about this. So intentionality matters to everything. And so, so 2019, I got my first dev role. And by early 2020, just before the pandemic hit, I started with Google. Now, just a nuance on that. My plan for getting into Google was very good because I'd screwed up so many times before. And because I understood how to be intentional. My plan for getting to Google was vastly different from the plan I used to learn to code in 2018 to become a professional developer by 2019. Okay. Hugely different, right? Because I had to analyze the heck out of what big tech in the US. And the reason I did that, James, the reason I wanted to go for FANG was because my wife and I are like, oh, you're not a lawyer anymore, so you can work anywhere. So let's go to the US. I'm like, yeah, let's do that. Cool, why not?
Yeah.
So that's what happened. But it was a very, very, and I cannot emphasize this enough. My FANG plan was very different for me because I was doing it myself than the learning to code plan.
Yeah. So before we jump to that, because I want to ask you about your approach there, I want to ask you kind of glossed over it for the, I guess, resources that you use in the curriculum. And I'm not looking for what you did, because I think you have already schooled me and you've taught me that it's not the thing. The thing is going to be different for everybody. What I want to ask, Zubin, is what kind of framework you use to curate that curriculum that you used to do what you did.
Well, the first insight was that, and I have to hammer this in quite a bit with the students, because my program is 12 months, and in that time, people face a lot of setbacks, right? And so I personally coach them through it. And this is what I've learned. No matter how much you tell people and how much they theoretically understand it, when it comes to their direct experience of it, they forget everything they've known. Like everything they thought they understood. Yeah, I totally get it. Yeah, failure is important. Yeah, hustle. They get smacked in the face. All that learning goes out the window.
Yep.
So yeah. That was the first thing I think I'd say I decided was going to be different for me, is I wasn't going to stop until I was pretty clear that I didn't want it anymore or I got it. One of these 2 things had to happen, right? And the thing with not wanting it anymore is it's almost indistinguishable from giving up, right? Like you could give up and say, and I've changed my mind, but actually you've given up, right? I had to be really, really self-aware and strict about that. In terms of sort of how I went about building the curriculum, so I did most of mine from Udemy, a few select YouTubes. But the thing is, the reason why I can now get people to do it in 8 months or less, whereas it took me so long, was you don't know what's useful and what's not, and what's relevant for your goals, right? So that's something I'm very good at now, and I work with my students. Everyone gets a customized coding plan because no 2 people are starting from the same place, right? If you're in Moscow, it's different from San Francisco, and I've had students in 12 countries or something. So for me, it was so here's the big insight I had about code. James, if you and I write the same line of Python, Java, JavaScript, whatever, it doesn't matter. If you and I write the identical line of code, all things being equal, we'll get an identical result. Right? Because code's kind of deterministic. Code just works. If you and I go into the same interview, we're not likely to get the same result, even if we have the same level of knowledge, right? And that insight was pivotal and critical for me because I realized it almost doesn't matter where you learn to code from, because it's going to work the same way.
Yeah.
Right? What matters is what you learn as part of that process. And having been in multiple industries and in several careers, I'd noticed a trend. Like law school, 90% of what I learned I never used
Hmm.
in the real world. What I ended up using in the real world was a combination of all those little skills combined with problem solving and experience to deliver the outcome I wanted. It's a recipe, not the ingredients.
Yeah.
Right. And so I realized learning to code is an ingredient. The language, the framework. Look, man, bread is pretty simple. It's flour, yeast, water, and heat. But most people will screw up making bread. It's not the ingredients, it's the recipe.
Yeah.
And that recipe takes a lot of crafting before you get it right.
Yep.
Right. So I de-emphasized what I was learning, which framework and all that, and I focused on what I call the minimum effective dose, which I really emphasize in my program. The idea is not to learn it. Most people come to this as how much code can I learn? My coach taught me to invert it. She said, doesn't matter what skill you're doing in life, from guitar to code to swimming, the question is what's the minimum I need to learn to get really good? It's 80-20 all over again.
Yeah.
That's it. That's what it
You're
was.
learning how to learn is what it sounds like to me.
And you've got some great posts on that on LinkedIn, because that's the meta skill that really matters, learning how to learn.
Yeah. No, 100%. So, okay. So let's go back to your story. You're at Google. You got in, but before you got in, thinking back, if I were you, because I was almost you in my very similar situation, I wasn't going to apply for an internship fresh out of college because I was a decade removed from college. So I want to ask you about the strategy and the path that you plotted and successfully executed, given your situation.
Yeah. So you mean the strategy as in like the steps I took for FANG, or specifically what sort of career plan I had? Okay. So for FANG, it was, I spent a long time studying the different types of questions they tend to ask.
Okay.
And I synthesized that with the experience I'd had as a hiring manager over the many years, where I'm like, how often did I actually look for just raw skill? And how often was that enough? It's necessary, but not sufficient. And that's a framework, we use in the law a lot, is this necessary or sufficient? And it's really important to build that disciplinary thinking. So I sort of isolated and teased out the various elements. Okay, first you need to get through the screening interview, then you need to get to the technical interview, then you need to get to a bunch of coding rounds, and those are fraught. And then you got to the behavioral rounds, and then you sort of get leveled and all that. And that was broadly the process in the US. Now, for my first job before, so the first 4 roles that I applied for and got well before Google, like the year before Google, I did no data structures and algorithms. And I want to put this out there, because people think that they spend years or months and months on data structures and algorithms without asking themselves the question, is that necessary for the game you're planning to play next? Right? Why spend time on something that may not be necessary? And it's not even sufficient. Like there are few things in life that are sufficient. Most things are necessary, and you have to combine them in enough volume that the combination of all those necessary things makes it sufficient to get in. Right? There are few things that on their own are sufficient. Right. So that's like the unicorn. So I was like, okay, for FANG, they have all these processes. And I said, okay, each step in this process is basically a filter. Right. Can I skip a step? So referrals are a way of skipping a step. You've immediately improved your odds that little bit. And the difference between success and failure in these things, I hope people really understand this, is the way I see it. And I've interviewed, when I was at Google, I interviewed candidates as well. I was on the hiring side as well, right? Outstanding candidates don't make it. And I'd seen this not just in engineering. I'd seen this in every career I'd been in every country I'd lived in. So I was like, first and foremost, try and skip as many steps as you can, right? Legitimately, using the rules. Yep. Second, know that at every step, your odds are tiny. They're genuinely small. And at 3% odds of success, if you increase it to 5 or 6, you're still 94% chance of failing. But you double your odds of success.
Yep.
Right? It's micro optimizations. Like, what does that mean? For every team, I'd understand what they were looking for. I'd understand what the hiring manager is looking for. I would ask questions. I'd be collaborative. I spent a lot of time in the interview actually talking and having a dialogue, and then weaving as much of that information as I could into the answers.
Smart.
Right? I wouldn't be afraid to show personality.
Sure.
It backfired a lot, by the way, especially in engineering, where a lot of people don't like personality, or
Sure.
they sort of tend to be suspicious of it or whatever. Like, you have the luck of the draw, right?
Yeah.
And that's another thing I realized is luck matters. Anybody out
Mm.
there who tells you I'm brilliant and that's why I made it, they're telling you half the story.
Yeah.
The other half is they got lucky on the day the interviewer was receptive to them. They got the
Yeah.
kind of questions that they could answer. They were able to reason through without amygdala hijacking the interview. And the other competitors who are better than you didn't show up for that interview.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's luck.
Yeah. No, I
Always
love
luck.
that. I love that. And I want to get your opinion, Zubin. I often talk about luck and also the luck surface area, almost like a shots on goal. The more shots on goal you have, the luckier
Yes.
you may become. I believe in that, but I wanted to filter that thought through you, see how you might.
1000%. Again, I sort of reemphasize this point to the students I coach is, look, if you and I, James, if we flip a coin now once, there's exactly a 50-50 chance one of us will win, right? But if you and I flip the coin 20 times or more, there's almost a 100% chance that both of us will win. At least once. Right. And that's kind of the trick to it.
Yeah.
Is you keep going, you keep repeating.
Yeah.
And
Put
you don't
yourself out
attach too much. Yeah, put yourself out there, right? So that's your surface area. You flip the coin once, then 50% chance you're going to fail. You
Yep.
don't flip it again, you just kept the odds at the worst they ever were.
Yeah.
That's the worst they ever were.
Yeah.
Right. But you increase surface area by trying again. And too many people attach way too much importance to FANG. And yes, I know it's easy for me to say this having been there, but folks, please hear me. Having been there actually gives me a little bit more authority to tell you this. You can have a fantastic career outside, and just because you're in there doesn't mean you're going to have a great career.
Yeah.
Right. We've seen that now.
Yeah.
After all these
Yeah,
layoffs,
no, with
right?
all the layoffs, 100%.
Correct. And people assume that it's some sort of Shangri-La, some sort of heaven. It's not. It's at the end of the day, another company with numbers, and you're a cog in the wheel, and that's okay if that's what you want. Yes, the status is great. Yes, the procedure is great. The learning, honestly, I had a great experience, but I knew plenty of people who didn't.
Yeah.
Right. And because learning comes down to the team you're in, not the company that pays you to do it.
Yep. Yeah.
So so that was sort of how the Google thing, how I ended up approaching the Google thing. In terms of luck, sure, I got lucky. Of course I got lucky. I beat out PhDs. It wasn't just skill.
Yep.
But my system was, how do I prove to you guys that I'm seriously keen to add value?
Yeah.
And what I don't know, I can know. And to be honest, it really helped that I was self-taught in my late 30s. Because that is a signal that no amount of computer science degrees can give hiring managers.
Good point. That's a great point.
And
you're not fresh out of college. You've got that experience, the quote unquote failures from before that you've snowballed into the knowledge that you've accrued up until that point.
And what kind of lunatic does this? Must be somebody who really loves it, who
That's
really
right.
wants this.
That's the kind of person you want.
That's the kind of person you want. The kind of person who wants it badly enough that they're taking crazy risks and working hard and willing to make it happen. And every one of my interviewers, from the Amazons to the Snapchat, every one of them would always comment, because they were a lot younger than me, right? They were in their 20s. Yeah. They would always comment. It's pretty incredible that he even got this far. And I took that seriously.
Yeah.
Because even if I failed, I realized they're kind of right, And it wasn't that I'm special. It was that I just put in the effort with the right
put in
plan.
the work. Yeah, no, and I firmly believe, Zubin, that anybody can accomplish anything. You just can't accomplish everything. And it's that question of focus, of intentionality, and just being driven, refusing to give up. So I definitely heard that in your story.
Totally. Thank you. Yeah. You can have anything you want. You can't have everything you want. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're at Google. What happens next?
So Google, then the world shut down. Right, because of the pandemic. And Australia went into a particularly hard lockdown. Melbourne especially went into a very hard lockdown. So, now my ex-wife, but my wife and I sort of, at that time, she and I packed up all the things we wanted, and we'd got the freight organized. My visas were all, our visas were all intact, and, we were ready to go. And then the US shut down, and it was, we'll see next quarter, what happens. And so I started going to the Google Melbourne office, because I really enjoy going to the office. There were not many people there. And so I spent the next, almost 2 years. I went from, the cloud team eventually to the Chrome team. It was a difficult period because you're working remotely. And this is another thing I want people to really understand is when you're onboarding to complex technology remotely, it's generally not easy. So this dream about, oh, I want to do things remote, be careful what you wish for. Here's why. It's really hard to do. There are not that many jobs that are genuinely remote. They may be work from home, hybrid, remote in the same time zone, but genuinely globally remote. Why are they going to pay you in dollars for something they could pay somebody in rupees locally? Like that's, the world doesn't work that way, right? So this catch about remote work, be very specific what people mean by remote work. Secondly, it's really hard to onboard, and it's really hard to get unstuck when people aren't around you, right? And thirdly, there's a very sinister consequence of that. If you don't get unstuck regularly and keep your velocity up, engineers measure things. They will see your productivity drop. They will fire you. Sorry, but it's fair. If they're not getting the productivity they need out of you, no matter how talented you are, if you're not able to deal with the fact that you're remote and you're not getting the support you need, and it could be unfair, right? At one level, in that you never got trained, you never got the support you wanted, whatever it is, you could get fired. So the learning I had at Google was, I was very fortunate. I was in a team that was super supportive. But had I not battled my way to learn to code, I reckon I wouldn't have done as well as I did, because it was hard going at Google. Imposter syndrome. Everybody around you is super busy, and most of your team's in the US, and blah, blah, blah. Like, it was really hard. And it's the world's largest monolithic code base. It's not easy to navigate. Like, even the tools aren't the tools that you use in the rest of the world. Like, Google doesn't even use conventional IDs. They have their own because that's how big their code base is. Everything is custom. So you have to learn everything from scratch. It's hard. And so had I not learned to battle and learn how to learn, to your point, James, and if I was in my 20s, I probably would have caved under that. It was hard. But I did okay, and so that was Google for a year. And then eventually, my now ex-wife, her business really grew, so she couldn't get back to work. Long story short, she couldn't get back to work because she had quit to come with me to San Francisco. And then the world shut down. So she started a business to keep her lights on, so to speak. And that business just went like a rocket ship. And she's like, dude, I don't think we can move to the US anymore. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I get it. And she had always been the one with the stable career. So I said, I'm happy to quit Google because Google wouldn't do remote, forever. They'll eventually call, and they started calling us, to the US in 2022. And so I said, okay, now I'd like to see what life would be like if I did work remotely, I wanted to go back to a smaller company. My heart's sort of in scale ups. And since I couldn't move to the US anyway and be with my team, I'm like, fine. And Australia has a few opportunities, but this is another thing. Tons of engineering roles in Sydney and stuff like that, but not all of them are the kind that I'd have the right skill for. So I could have applied for them. But again, it would have been not aligning with what I wanted to do. Do I want to be a seasoned C++ engineer that works in geo and maps? Not really. So I said, okay, even though that means I can't stay at Google, my goals now require me to consider leaving Google. And just for the record, it's a very hard thing to leave a really great company, right? In my 20s, I would not have been able to do it. Heck, in my early 30s, I would not have been able to do it. But had I not learned how to be intentional and pay the price for what I want in terms of my goals, I don't think I would have been able to leave Google. And to your point, this, from where we started this conversation an hour ago, I think these are the moments when people drift a little bit. They stay in places because they don't know whether they should leave. They just know that leaving feels bad. And they don't know whether leaving's right for them. They haven't answered that question. And the only way you can answer that question is to never lose sight of what your goal is.
I love that. And I just wanted to interject quickly because of that. I went through that for probably, if not more than a year in that previous career with the boats, where I knew that I was kind of sleepwalking again, and it wasn't lighting me up. It wasn't that adventure that I had treated it as before. I knew it had to stop, but I guess I was afraid because of what might come next. And I was just so glad that I eventually worked through that. And it sounds like you did as well. But I wanted to ask you.
Sorry, James, can I ask you a question about that? Before? So
Sure.
It's so important because I went through that. And the only reason I could do it leaving Google was because I'd left my legal career before. And that was a huge risk, right? The perceived risk. So it's similar for you. How long? I mean, okay, let me ask this as a question that presumes an answer just so that you can either vehemently, reject it or not, right?
Sure.
you stuck around much longer after you knew you should have left, right?
Yes.
Okay. Why do you think that is? Because it's universal. I've never seen someone who said
Yeah.
no.
So there's a question in here for you as well, but I'm going to be very honest with both you and the audience. A couple of years prior to this point, when I was actually in the throes of that job and enjoying it, still treating it as an adventure, my wife and I came across the idea of financial independence. And I've always been a natural saver, and I'm curious of you as well, because you had mentioned, several hundred K. So it sounds like there was some intentionality there on the financial front on your end as well. But for us, it almost became a game where, okay, especially before the baby, before we were even married, we got on the same page. And this financial independence gave me the language through which I could explain my inability to spend money to my wife. And maybe I erred too much on the side of that. Parsimonious was the word I was looking for.
That's the word,
and
yep.
So long story short with that, I stuck around in that job because I was maxing out the 401k. I had these mental projections that, okay, 3 more years of this is when things were still going up like a rocket ship prior to COVID and everything bottoming out. It kind of kept me, it was almost like, in hindsight, they were almost like chains, Zubin. And I say that I was absolutely privileged, and I acknowledge that. It's definitely a first world problem to have. But to answer your question, honestly, that's the reason as to why or a large part of that reason as to why I stuck in that, because I wanted to continue maxing out the Roth IRAs, maxing out both 401ks as long as we could. I didn't want to take that lull. And in hindsight, I really always say I wouldn't change anything because everything we go through kind of lends itself to our next play. But again, if I'm being honest, I wish that I had been willing to burn those proverbial ships, not the actual ones, earlier, because getting to the end of the line, even though I'm not there yet, what's next? And I can already see that now, that you save up a pot of money, you get to the end and you think that you've won the game. But at that point, it's just like, what do I do now? So I'm so glad that I eventually talked myself out of that mindset and pursued the career I was passionate about. And it's so funny now, to the point where we've got, my wife is able to stay at home. We're not maxing out the 401k. We're still putting away money, and I'm okay with that. So I feel like I really evolved on that front as well. But that's a very long answer to your question.
It's a beautiful answer, because I think you touched on the entire psychological journey and the fact that all of us have values that come into conflict with some of our goals.
Sure.
Right. And in your case, the financial prudence, the parsimony, these are things that are deep values, and it's hard to sometimes let go of them, even temporarily or tactically or strategically, to get to your goal. It's very hard. And I think people need to really pay attention to the fact that a lot of the reason we don't do things is not because we can't, it's because we have conflicts of values inside us. Right? Our need for security, our need for financial, our need for a monthly wage. Like I recently posted how, Nicholas Taleb said the monthly wage is one of the most addictive things. And it is true. It is true. God help me, it is true, right? So, those are conflicts of values, the need for security, the need for in my case, the need for social approval / validation / prestige, having, been very prestige driven in my early years, that had become a habit. I chose a law school based on the prestige. I chose, the firms based on prestige. I did stupid things. For me, in hindsight, stupid things like that, because they trapped me. Exactly. So they were chains. Every passing year, I put another chain around my neck. Right. And to let go of that, in my late 30s, and when all my friends were, partners, my peers were all partners, earning, obscene amounts of money, and there I was going down to zero for a couple of years. And when I say savings, in Australia we have mortgage structures where you keep paying off the mortgage, but you can access some of the cash. I was pulling money out from the mortgage effectively and paying 4.1% on it. I had all these reasons to not do it. Right. When I was leaving my legal career, I had severe doubt. I probably left 3 years after I'd formulated the desire to, maybe if not 4. When I was leaving my corporate career, I remember at least a year of saying, I'm so ready to get out of this, and start my own thing. And it took a full year. And the reason I'm bringing it, and I asked you that question, James, is I want people to really, really understand that you will never be ready.
Yes.
You will never, ever be ready. There will always be a million good, rational, sensible, unassailable reasons why you should not. and you need one reason that sounds crazy why you should, that
Yeah.
really speaks to you. You can
Yeah.
have 100 reasons why you should not. That's normal. You need
Yeah.
one good reason to do it. Then
Yeah.
just do it. You
Yeah.
know? And if you're not prepared for the psychological battle, you will make, and let's be very clear, half-assed, half-hearted attempts get you half-hearted results.
Powerful.
You can never make small action and expect big results except by luck. And yes, even a dead clock will show the right time twice a day. Doesn't mean it's working.
Yep.
So it's really important that people realize, especially career changes, you're never going to be ready.
Yeah. No, I
It's
love
going to
that.
be scary all along the way, right? It's
Yep.
hard. It's hard.
Yep. Now, tell me about Chainlink. I see you got the hat on. I want to know about some of the day-to-day.
Yeah, so it's an interesting role. I get to write a lot of code. I also get to present and teach others. And I've found, James, as I get older, my number one skill appears to be communication and education. Like that's why I enjoy the coaching I do. And I work with only a few handful of students at a time, because I believe that career change is very different from learning to code. Like learning to code is frankly the easy part. Getting a new industry to accept you is way harder because it's so unpredictable. And so Chainlink, I'm a developer relations engineer, so I'm technical enough to write a lot of the code, but I also communicate well enough and understand sales and marketing and product enough to influence product decisions. I've just finished at ETH Denver, and look, I love the company. Again, a lot of people are like, oh, why did you leave Google? Why did you choose Chainlink? And they always assume it has to do with the brand. It honestly doesn't anymore. Google was strategic for me to try and move to the US. That never worked out. It may work out in the future. Who knows? But Chainlink was 100%. By this time, I'd learned what made me happy. And the guys at Chainlink Labs know this. I chose Chainlink over some of the other offers because of the quality of the people I was getting to work with. Not just in terms of technical skill. Yes, that too, because one of my biggest drivers, and I know this, is learning. But in terms of the kind of hearts they have, right? Like it sounds so hokey, but you can be in a great company with an awesome product and a massive pay package, and you have one or two jerks in your team, you will be miserable.
Yes.
It's all it takes, one drop to poison the well, right?
Yep.
But you can be my first role as a coder was in a company that no one's heard of. 5 of us were there. Some of the best days of my life, best learning of my life. No one had heard about the company. I wasn't getting paid as much as other places, but man, I grew, and God, I loved those people. So I realized very early, at that moment, I realized when I met the folks at Chainlink Labs who were the teams, I was like, the engineering guys were great, the DevRel guys were great, and I'm like, all right, what's my goal? My goal is to help as many people as I can understand that technology is something that's accessible to them while writing a lot of code. That's it. With good people. Yeah. These are the three things that matter to me, right? And I found all three at Chainlink Labs. And so I said, okay, that's what I'm going to do. Now, in future, things change, companies change, lives change. Now that I know my values, I know that whatever I end up doing next, and this coaching thing I've been doing for a couple of years now, it meets all the requirements. It meets my need for service, my need to help people. And there's no, this, James, from all the amazing people you've interviewed on your podcast. There is no greater feeling in the world than watching somebody light up because they realize what their own potential is.
100%.
It's a beautiful feeling, and the opportunity to do that for students makes my world go round. So, yeah.
Tell me more. Tell us more about this coaching program that you have.
So it's a 12-month program at the moment, and I will find ways to sort of compress it. But right now, I do 12 months because the first 8 weeks are really focusing on all the skills required for career change. And I keep emphasizing learning to code is one milestone on the path of career change, and there's a lot that needs to be done after that, right? So in the 8 weeks, I cover all the sort of strategies and skills required, and they get lifetime access to the videos and all that. And we have weekly coaching calls, which is why I work crazy hours on weekends and nights and stuff like that, to sort of accommodate that outside my day job. And then for 10 months after that, I give them the support they need, because pretty much everybody understands what they need to do. But when it comes time to applying it to their life, to their context, a lot of my students have kids, they work in different countries. One of my students had to, flee his country because of war, in the middle of the program. Life will throw all kinds of, shit at you, right? Like it'll throw all kinds of stuff at you. And everyone thinks their problems are the biggest. And to you, your problems are the biggest. And so for 10 months, I coached them on how to overcome those, address specific challenges they face. Usually by month 6 or 7, they're starting to interview. They've learned the code that they need to be interview ready, but then they get failures or they have, rejections in the market. They don't even get technical screens. And there are a whole bunch of other skills from communicating to understanding how to evaluate what teams and products, are looking for, to understanding how to speak to a hiring manager, to understanding how to structure behavioral interview questions or how to prepare for the technical interviews. Do I use lead code? Do I use something else? These are all tactical things. People mistake them for strategic things. They're not. They're very tactical. And so I coach them through all those roadblocks, to the point where usually in 12 months or less, if they've done everything I've told them, they become developers no matter where they are.
Yeah. So I know you mentioned that you only work with, I guess, a few students at a time. Are you currently accepting?
This is all personal coaching. Would I currently accept you?
Yes. No, Are you currently accepting new students? Not that I'm not interested.
I was like, James, mate, you should be running your own. Yes, I constantly accept students because people rotate off all the time, right? So there's no fixed batches.
Sure.
People can get it. I can sort of put the links in your show notes, futurecoderstraining.com. And I call it future coders training because I want people to understand that it's part of their future.
Yeah.
They're just going to set the intention. You have to identify today as a future coder before tomorrow you become a coder.
Yeah.
That has to be part of your identity.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And I will definitely put that in the show notes. Zubin, you have an absolutely amazing story, and I feel like you're still just getting warmed up. So I'm interested to watch it continue. But before we wrap, I got a few rapid fire hot seat questions if you're up for them.
Let's do it.
All right. What does your typical morning routine look like?
Meditation, followed by either a workout, but usually these days I just go straight to work after meditation and shower. I don't actually eat breakfast.
Okay, really? So, and on the meditation front, what type of meditation and for how long?
So people overcomplicate meditation. So I decide what the meditation day feels like. If I have things that are on my mind and I know I'm not going to be able to fight them off, I judo them into being a very important part of my meditation, and I call it a thinkitation, which is something I learned from Tom Bilyeu. So if I feel my mind's got a lot of things on it, I'm not really going to be able to push it out. Fine, I'm going to dwell on you, but intensely on you. I'm going to zoom in on you, and I find that helps you solve those problems. On days that I'm feeling mellow, spiritual, or more philosophical, and I've got that calm, my mind's clear and relatively cruisy, then I do what I call a self-awareness meditation. So either I dwell on certain emotions that are inside me, or just how my body feels, and I just go. I just go with it. Yeah. Sometimes I'll just listen to a beautiful piece of music, and focus entirely on the music and try not to be distracted from it. So that's a concentration kind of meditation. At other times it's an introspective meditation.
Yeah. I love your
for about 20 minutes.
I love it.
Yeah.
All right. If money didn't exist, what do you think you would do every day with your time?
Probably I'm very proud to say this. Probably what I'm doing now, like writing a little bit of code every day and helping people. Like I'm truly aligned, and it's taken a long time. Yeah. But I do this. Yeah. I'd have to find out how to pay for Netflix, but I'll do this. and how to buy guitars. Like those are my these are things that are important to me. So apart from that, I'd do exactly this.
I think that means you found your calling, which is great and beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
All right. If you could send a single message to your former self to help you during that transition into tech, what do you think that would be?
Ignore anybody who's not done exactly what you want to do. Exactly what you want to do.
I like that.
And also on that, there's a nuance. People think that, learning to code means I need to speak to coders. No. If you're career transitioning, you need to speak to career transitioners, not coders. Because a lot of coders haven't changed career. They're formally trained. They have no idea how to change career. Not the same thing.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah.
Any books or podcasts that have had the biggest impact on you?
Exponential Growth. Tom Bilyeu's Impact Theory. Books. Oh gosh, there's so many of them. Like there are literally hundreds of them. So I I do about 40 to 50 audiobooks now a year. There used to be, I was doing about 10 to 14 reading books. I'm a very slow reader because I tend to think and absorb a lot. But audiobooks I can do while I'm riding the bike, while I'm at the gym. So I've now, quadrupled my consumption that way. So yeah, look, anything by some of the inspirational stuff. It's not down to the podcast; it's down to episodes. But people like Tim Ferriss, Lex Friedman, Tom Bilyeu, Jocko Willink, even some Joe Rogan stuff. That's for the inspiration stuff, and of course, exponential growth. Had I had exponential growth 4 years ago, I think it would have been absolutely a different experience. Because you bring people on the show who were the sort of people I wanted to become, and it's really hard to find career changes. You find lots of coders, not that many career changes. So shows like this are invaluable. And strangely enough, Abraham Lincoln, Benjamin Franklin, Mandela, Gandhi, not because these guys did what I wanted to do, but they overcame troubles in an era of the world where they didn't have all the solutions we do today. And so studying how they think about it and understanding how miserable they felt at different points of time in their life made me realize that, heck, they had really bad days too. Abe Lincoln, career changer, self-taught lawyer, like, hello,
Yep. Yep.
So, and how many times did he fail, before he became president? So, and he had depression and he had, a broken heart. Like, people have trouble, man. People have trouble,
Yeah. No, I love it, and I appreciate the plug. I definitely don't deserve to be with the other podcast that you mentioned, but I'll take it.
As far as I'm concerned, you totally do, my friend. Totally do.
I appreciate that, Zubin. Is there anything else that you want to talk about today, or anything else that you think somebody trying to move into tech from a non-traditional background needs to know?
One last thing.
Sure.
It is a custom job, and here's why. Anytime you feed something into Google Maps or Apple Maps, there's always two pieces of information. Everybody thinks about the destination. Everybody knows where they want to go, but nobody bothers to feed in where they're starting from. Right. And there are 2 points of information needed for any navigational journey. It's not enough to know where you're going. You have to know where you're starting from. And the problem often with a lot of blogs and stuff like that is that they tell you how to get to London. They never ask you where the hell are you starting from.
Yeah.
For the vast majority of the world, you head north-ish, west, east, whatever. For a significant part of the world, you head south.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. You have to know where you're starting to deconstruct where you want to go. I love that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, that's a perfect way to wrap. Zubin, again, you have an amazing story. Again, I feel like you're just getting warmed up, and I'm really excited to watch it continue to play out. And I just want to thank you again for coming on and sharing that story with the audience. I really appreciate it.
James, thank you for giving people like me the opportunity to share that story. And thank you for having the courage to have done what you did and then committed, like you've done such a great job of this, committed to flushing out more stories like this. It is a genius idea, and I'm sure lots of people have had it, but you've executed it superlatively. Like, you've done a great job. So thank you, because you've made my life and my job a lot easier, because you now give people the hope, the stories, the roadmaps, and that itself. The funny thing about when Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile is it was considered medically a dangerous thing to do, almost impossible. And then I think within 2 years, 13,000 people did it.
Bunch of people did, yeah.
Yeah. So that's what you're doing, right? This is the Roger Bannister moment. You are showing people that lots of people have done the 4-minute mile, and I fully expect in the next 3 to 10 years, you're going to see an exponential growth in career changes in the 30s and 40s making it happen because of people like you. So thank you, James.
Thanks for listening. If you got value from today's show, please consider leaving a 5-star rating and a review on Apple or Spotify. It's a free way you can support the show and help other people just like you find the story and others like it. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to follow the show on whatever podcast application you use. And most importantly, if you know someone that might be interested in breaking into tech, tell them about the show.